The 2020 iPhone SE is the pinnacle of a parts bin phone. So it's got some old, it's got some new, and it all comes together to give us this device that is familiar yet quite new at the same time. So this is a very aggressively priced $399 phone, and it does give you a lot of cool things for that money, but it also does skimp in some weird places. So the question that comes down to is this phone, a essentially 6-year-old design, still good enough to keep up with the competition from 2020 that is getting very tough? So let's start off and talk about the build quality and materials of this phone. The iPhone SE has a glass back and an aluminum frame, and it just feels very premium in the hand. Very, very familiar. If you've ever used an iPhone, you know exactly what this feels like. An iPhone of recent years. The glass and the aluminum, it just feels absolutely fantastic. And I think that this design has aged so well. It's so simple. It's so neat. Sure, the front looks a little outdated with those big bezels, but overall, I think that this phone has aged so much better than most other Android phones of its kind of design period have. So this design does date all the way back to 2014. So thinking about it being a 6-year-old design, it has aged super well, I think. This is IP67 water and dust resistant as well, so you don't have to worry around water or dust. That's something that a lot of its competition doesn't have. They might say they're water or dust resistant. None of them are certified. None of them have been tested. So that is one thing that this phone definitely does, and I think that for people who are concerned about durability, that's just an awesome plus point. Moving on, let's talk about this display. So this is absolutely, I think, one of the weakest links of this phone. It's got a 4.7-inch LCD display. It's not exactly 1080p, but it does have a decent 326 ppi, which is on par with most mid-range phones of today. Definitely not on the higher side, it's on the lower side, but it's not that terrible. Now, again, it's just like this display, it traces all the way back to the iPhone 6, which is, 4-6 years old now? So you just got to think about that, right? That's something that you, you can't run away from that fact. Now, this isn't the greatest display compared to the competition, I know that, but the thing is, it's not that bad. Like, I never looked at this display and said, oh man, this is such a bad display, I don't want to use it, or I don't want to do something on it. Like, it once you get used to it, I know that we have this expectation that every phone needs to have the greatest display with the greatest specs, but honestly, this is average, and average feels fine in a phone with this price point. And when you're looking at who this is considered for, it looks just fine to me. And sure, you know, it would be really nice to have a better display, but this isn't bad enough on a phone to just like this display isn't bad enough that it would make me change my mind about buying this phone, or stop me from buying this phone in the first place. Now, one thing that will stop me from buying this phone is the battery. So that is the weakest link of this phone. It is an 1821 milliamp hour battery cell, and it is just not enough for today's needs. Like, you know, I am a heavy user. I'll give you that. So sure, this phone is already at a disadvantage coming to a user like me, but you know, it's just the small battery size. There's nowhere to hide, right? There's no level of optimization you can go for that will circumvent this. So I get about 4 to 5 hours of screen on time with charge, and I use mostly social media, calls, music, apps. You guys can see here my most used apps are just you know, mostly social apps or music or YouTube. So it does say 6 hours here, but remember, this is going all the way back 24 hours. This is not today's charge, so it's a little bit weird to track screen on time with the iPhones, but just honestly, yeah, the battery on this, it would I would have to end up charging at some point during the day on most days. There was very few days where I could get through the entire day without having to charge up this phone. It wouldn't take much, maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes on a wireless charger here or there would get me through, but still, that's an inconvenience that I didn't have to face with the OnePlus Nord and the iPhone 11 Pro that I've been using up to that point. And, you know, the small battery is only going to get worse as it ages. You know, that's the thing about batteries. As it ages, it's going to degrade and it's going to keep getting worse. So if it's like this when it's brand new, it's going to be problematic when it's getting older. So the thing I will say, though, is that if you're a light user, If you only have about 3 to 4 hours of screen on time during a day, this phone will do just fine for you. But if you are using it a little bit more than that, you will probably need to charge it up in the middle of the day, which again, not the worst inconvenience, but if you're somebody who's out and about a lot and don't have access to a charger all the time, that does become an issue. Now, moving on, let's talk about the speakers. So, of course, iPhones have just really gotten the speaker game down, and this is no different. This does have a stereo setup, so it has the earpiece speaker up here and then the bottom firing one right down here. It has really good sound quality. It gets loud, and the best thing is it maintains the quality of audio even when it gets loud. So what I'm going to do is give you guys a listen for yourself, and we'll move on from there. All right, so let's talk about performance. This is undoubtedly the strong suit of this phone. It comes with an A13 Bionic chip, which is the latest one that Apple has to offer when it came out. It's the same one that's available in the $1,000 iPhone 11 Pros. The sad thing, though, is it only has 3 gigs of RAM. I'll talk about it a little bit later. But this is undoubtedly, as I said, a lot of what you're paying for. That $400 price point, a lot of cuts that are made, they are made so that they can give you this A13 Bionic chip. The performance of this is just outright amazing. I have never experienced a single stutter or slowdown with this phone at all. The A13 is just so fantastic, and it's going to last you years of usage without any problems. Like, there's not a single stutter that you can experience on this phone. Things are just super smooth. Like, there's nothing that you can do that will phase this phone. Like, everything just happens so quickly. It's just like, it's crazy. This is a great phone, and I just can't say anything negative about the performance, except for the RAM. The RAM is definitely on the lower end, and I've noticed a few times where apps aren't stored in memory, apps that you'd expect. So, just switching between 1 or 2 apps, you'd notice, oh man, this is not keeping that in memory, which is annoying, but it's the thing that Apple does. It can manage performance without needing a lot of RAM, but come on, it's just like, this phone is not going to age well. 3 gigs of RAM is not enough anymore, and it's just, that faster processor helps. It covers up a lot of the load time, so even though it does load, again, it loads up so quick you don't notice it, but this is just going to get worse with age, as I said, and I think that this was maybe one place where a compromise was not supposed to happen, but, again, there's nothing we can do about it beyond this point, but just another gig or 2 of RAM would have just made this problem go away completely. So moving on, let's talk about software. And iOS is just so beautifully optimized. There's so much focus on security. There's so much focus on privacy and all these wonderful things that anybody that is a little bit concerned about those things, Apple really makes it easy to get into this, and it just it's really good. And another thing that's kind of unrivaled is app experience, right? The experience you get with apps on social media apps, with so many others, they're honestly unrivaled. As I said, despite being an older form factor, this just it feels like there's nothing that was left behind. Like, a lot of Android phones, you'll feel like, man, they didn't optimize this app for me or something like that. But with these, because there's not as many iPhones, right? Let's be real, that's the real reason. It's easier for developers to make sure that all the iPhones run as smoothly as they can, and that's an experience that is hard to find on the Android side of things. Now, I think the undeniably best part about software is that because of Apple and the A13 Bionic, you're going to get at least 4 to 5 years of software updates, and honestly, I think that you'll just get bored of this phone before it ever dies, so that's a fantastic thing. And if you're someone who likes to hold on to your phone for a very long time, you're going to be very happy about this phone. Now, let's move on and talk about the camera. So this is a very simple setup. 1 camera on the back, 1 camera on the front. That's it. No gimmicks, no nothing. That's all you've got. And the hardware is directly carried over from the iPhone 8. So this is the same rear physical camera and the front camera. And they, you'd expect that's not good enough, right, for this for 2020. With all the camera improvements in the last couple of years, a 3-year-old camera setup wouldn't do it. But honestly, thanks to the power of that A13 processor, the iPhone SE now has the same smart HDR and image processing you get on the iPhone 11. And the improvements on the software end of images are just making a huge difference. And the cameras, they give you clearly better results compared to the iPhone 8. I did an entire video comparing the iPhone 8 to the SE where I went into detail with the camera. And if you want, go check that out. I'll have a card right up here so you guys can go see that video. And you'll see exactly what I mean as when I say that software does a big job here. It really helps the entire experience. Now, it's definitely not as featureless when we compare it to the competition. The Nord and Pixel 4a, right off the bat, they have night mode, which this doesn't have. They have a bunch more modes. The Nord has a bunch more cameras. It's got an ultra wide. It's got ultra wide both on the front and the back. Quality aside, it still gives you more options than the iPhone does. But overall, it's the camera does a pretty decent job. I'm just very upset with the quality of the photos you get in the dark. It's just not good. I'll throw up a few samples here. It's just this phone does not do good with the dark. Photos don't come out really well, but otherwise, when you got the right lighting, things look really good. As you guys can see, it's just the camera is good, but it's far from the greatest. But I think at this price point, it's a good competitor. But because of the lack of the wider feature set, I think that this could become something that's, it's not easy. You can't just say this is the best camera outright because it does miss out on some of those things. The front camera is okay on its best day, below average on most days. The field of view is very small, which is the biggest issue. You don't get a very wide field of view compared to other phones, especially the OnePlus Nord that has 2 cameras on the front, and even the Pixel 4a, which has a much wider field of view. So the front camera is definitely not for group selfies, and it is most definitely not meant for low light selfies. So if you're someone who likes to take photos indoors in lower lighting, just stay away from this phone. I can't, there's nothing you can do that will improve this. So that's really it with the camera. Let's move on and finish this off. Okay, so we've covered everything we possibly could have with this phone, and what is my final verdict? So this is a great phone, but it's definitely not for everybody. There are people that it's actually geared towards, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So this phone does cut some strategic corners, but I still think that given its target audiences, it does make a lot of the right calls. I personally would have preferred there be 3 things different about this phone, and I would have thought it was pretty much a perfect phone. Number 1, it needs to have a little bit more of an updated display. This definitely ages the phone a lot, and I just wish it would have been a little bit more advanced. Number 2, the battery. So the battery is the weakest link of this phone, and a bigger battery cell would have really helped this phone out a lot and would have really made this phone a much easier recommendation to make. And number 3, that is the RAM. So while the A13 is going to be amazing with performance, the 3 gigs of RAM is definitely going to show its age, and it already is in a few ways in my testing. So that's something that I wish they would have improved, but honestly can't do anything much about it. So who is this phone for? So as I was talking about a little bit earlier, this phone is for a lot of different types of people, and let me list them out. It's for anyone that's comfortable with the iPhone 6, 6S, 7, 8, that entire lineup. If anybody's really in love with that design and is very happy with it, this is for them. It's for anyone that wants a small iPhone. So iPhones are quite big now, with the iPhone 11 being upwards of 6 inches. So there's nothing that's small and compact that can be one-hand used like the entire. It's just, this is a perfect one-hand phone, and for someone who wants that, this is perfect. Or it's for anybody that wants to get into the Apple ecosystem but not spend too much money. At $400, I think that it's a good gamble if you want to try out iOS and you want to try out the Apple ecosystem, but you don't want to spend thousands of dollars and lock yourself in case you might not like it. $400, I think, is a acceptable amount to pay into to try it out. Or this is for anyone that's looking to buy a phone that will last for years but not cost you $1,000. So this is $400, but it is more than likely to get the same number of updates that the more expensive $1,000 iPhone 11 Pro got. So a lot of target audiences here, and all of them are very under-catered, right? This is going to be a phone that doesn't really have direct competition because iOS in itself kind of differentiates itself, and someone who's looking to buy an iPhone is not going to cross-shop it with Androids. That's the reality of it. They're going to cross-shop it with other iPhones. And within the iPhone lineup, this is a very unique and a very aggressively priced phone. So all in all, this phone is for a lot of different types of people, but definitely the one group it's not for are the enthusiasts. So this is not going to appease the enthusiasts, and it wasn't made to appease them. They don't care if enthusiasts are pissed off at this phone. They don't care that enthusiasts are gonna, you know, mock it or make fun of it. But this phone is for people who don't care about their phone. They don't care about what screen it has or what processor it has or they don't care. They don't even know about this stuff. All they want is a phone that'll work, a phone that's cheap, and a phone that will last them for years to come. So that, it really does well. And talking about everything else, the overall experience of this phone has been great. I've been very happy with it for the last month. I really don't think that I regret it at all. Like, it's been a great experience. I definitely would have liked a little bit more battery life out of it. But the thing is, you know, with everything else being said, the performance is awesome. The cameras are okay. Definitely would like a little bit better cameras, but I talked about those earlier, so I'm not going to get too much into it. And everything else really has all the markings of a premium phone. It gets fast charging, it has wireless charging, it has a lot of things that a bunch of other phones don't have. So overall, I think that the SE, while it does lack, you know, a good display or some of the other fancy bells and whistles that come with the Android competition, on its own, I think that, you know, what it offers, being the great performance and the long life with 5 years of software updates, it does start to appeal, and it does start to make sense when you think about this as a long-term phone. When you're going to own this phone for a long time, honestly, your options start to dwindle, and this becomes one of the most viable options for under $400 or for under $500 to get. So I would definitely recommend the iPhone SE to anyone that asked me, but I would definitely show them all the weak points. I would let them know, hey, look, you're going to have issues with the battery in a couple years, the RAM is a little bit weaker, the display is not up to par, all this stuff. I'd warn them, and I'd say, if you're okay with this, buy it with your eyes closed. It's a great phone. But if you are somebody who has a little bit more need out of the battery, or if someone that wants a little bit of a bigger screen, or if you're someone that just wants something that is not as old of a design as this phone with a little bit more battery life, then I would recommend them, hey, go look at the iPhone XR, go look at the iPhone 11, or the upcoming iPhone 12. You know, the lineup is going to change in a couple of weeks, but go look at those. They're only a couple $100 more, but they could give you exactly what you want. If you're not willing to compromise on that, maybe a couple $100 of compromise on the price will get you exactly what you want. So that's it for the iPhone SE review. I am very happy with this phone. I'm very excited to see what this phone will do to the sales charts. It is an interesting, unique proposition from Apple that has been never known to make cheap phones, to make more aggressively priced phones. So it is a very new chapter with Apple's history, and I'm here for it. I'm living for it, and I'm very excited to see what this phone does in the future. And hopefully there are more iPhone SEs down the road as well. That's it for this one, guys. If you have any more questions about the iPhone SE, or if you want to watch more videos about it, I'll have all of those linked in down in the description below. You can ask me any questions you have down in the comments as well. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media. I'll have all the handles right here on the screen, and of course down in the description below. So go follow me over there, check out what I'm doing behind the scenes, and just give you a little bit more of an in-depth sight into some of these reviews that I do. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.